Hi, it's Keith Parnell, and I'm here today with Peggy Hill and John Two-Hawks to talk about John's new album, Emergence, and the album release concert coming up on Mother's Day. I'll start with you, Peggy, so we can get some details about the show, and then we'll talk to John about the music and the inspiration for the album. So tell us about the details of the release concert, date, time, and what people can expect from the show.
Okay, well, the show is going to be held at the Inn of the Ozarks Convention Center on West Van Buren. And the doors open at 6, the show starts at 7 on Mother's Day, Sunday, May 10th, which is really special to us. And the reason that we chose that date is because we have done Mother's Day concerts in Eureka Springs for decades. So we're excited to come back and do that again on Mother's Day. You can bring your family, your mother, yourself, whoever. The tickets are $25 in advance online at johntwohawks.com, $30 at the door. We have VIP tickets for people that get early entry, pre-show meet and greet and front row seats, and a gift bag. Moms get in for half price, 50% off the tickets for mom, $15 for moms. There's free parking. Children under 12 are free. I'll repeat again, you can get the tickets online at johntwohawks.com or by calling 479-253-1732. And we're really hoping to get a lot of people out because the Emergence album is incredible. And we're going to have some surprise guests that day too. So you all put it on your calendar.
Absolutely. And I know you have some special sponsors for the show. So what can you tell us about those?
Okay, so Eureka Springs Flowers and Gifts on Van Buren is a wonderful sponsor, and they have provided flowers for every single one of the moms. And also Three Sisters Cafe, which is the greatest place on the planet to eat, and Circle Studios Records, who produced this album.
Thank you, Peggy. And let's take it over to John. John, what was your inspiration for making the album? Tell us about Emergence and how it came to be.
So the inspiration for the album really is about where we find ourselves collectively right now in the world and what's happening in the world and sort of the kind of the chaos and the madness and the nuttiness of the world that we're living in right now. And I just started thinking about how could I express how I feel about all that musically. And that's what sort of started to birth the compositions and the music for the album. I tried to create the album in a way that's chronological in a way. So it starts off in a place where you feel that kind of ominousness and you feel that darkness and the shadow kind of sense of it all. And each song kind of edges its way closer and closer out of the abyss and invites the listener to kind of look at the kind of place where we are, to kind of look into the chasm that is this great divide and this abyss that we find ourselves in, to look at it, to assess it, to accept it, to just admit what it is, and then from there to try to find our way out of it and try to get to a place where we can emerge, which is where the title of the album comes from, is the idea that we collectively need an emergence. We need to emerge from this place that we find ourselves, where we sort of sit behind screens and yell at strangers who we've never met and are unkind to each other. We need to get back to a place where we don't do that, where we see each other as human beings again, and we see each other as brothers and sisters again, as relatives of the same planet and of the same story, and not as enemies, you know. And so the album kind of starts with this sort of almost like it's like a grand introduction, you know, with this opening song. The way it begins is sort of shocking almost, just jarring. It kind of snaps you awake, and you become alert, and you're like, whoa, what is this? What is happening? And that's on purpose. And musically, what I was trying to do there is to say, wake up. We all need to wake up to what's happening and where we find ourselves, because we all need to get up and do our part. Use our gifts, use our talents, use our love. We need to do that. And so the first song, which is called Incipience, And I have to say, I'm very proud and very happy to have named that song Incipients, because my younger brother just passed away back in December. And a few years back, he wrote a novel. And the novel was called Incipients. And it is a perfect title for the opening song, because incipients means something's coming. It's alluding to something beginning, something new, something's rising. It's an almost an ominous kind of a thing, but it's not all ominous. It's just like, what is that over there? Something's coming. And so I honored my brother with that title. It was a way for me to kind of, give him a little silent secret nod. So anyway, then the album kind of works its way from there, and about 2/3 of the way through, as you listen, is what I always encourage people to do is take off your shuffle if you're going to listen on a streaming service, and listen track 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Listen in order, because it's created in order on purpose, and there's a flow to it that happens. And so it starts off kind of telling the story of where we find ourselves in the shadows and all those things, and kind of hinting along the way that, oh, wait a minute, there it is, there's the light, there's the love, there's the kindness, there's the goodness, there's the balance. It's over there, I see it, but then all of a sudden, the music swings back into the darkness again. And that's kind of how I feel about where we are. We just keep swinging back. We go, oh, there's the light, and then here we are again. We're back in the chaos again. And so, as the album goes, then there's this moment where you sort of reach peak anarchy. And that song is Sonic Madness, and I'm proud to say it features the awesome lead guitar solos of my friend David Blankenship. And that is sort of the last gasp, if you will, of the madness. And that's why I named it Sonic Madness. Sonic is audio. It's when we speak, we put out audio, so there's this audio madness. There's this like, yelling and and arguing and dissonance that's happening between us all. And so that song is intentionally crazy, intentionally dissonant. And then after that comes the song that's the subtitle of the album, which is Seize the Power. Now that song is probably one of my favorites on the album. And I want to explain that, because Seize the Power, the idea behind Seize the Power is not about aggression, and it's not about the way we might think of power. Because what I'm talking about when I'm thinking of power is I'm thinking about the power of kindness. I'm talking about seize the power of kindness back from those who would have us be cruel to each other. Seize the power of decency and goodness back from those who would have us be uncouth and crass and rude. And seize the power of love back from those who would have us hate. So that's the power I'm talking about when I think of seize the power. But seizing is an action. It means to do something, Reach and grab, reach and take. And it's up to us all. It's up to us all to reach for our grace, to reach for our love, to reach for our kindness, to reach for our patience, and to give that to each other as brothers and sisters again, so that we can emerge from the darkness again and find our way back to a place of balance and peace and kindness. And so from that point on, from Seize the Power on, the entire tone of the album changes. The compositions become major in key, and they become light and hopeful and happy. And so it's almost like two albums in one, in a way,
You definitely feel that in the music. Going back to Sonic Madness, that song, there are some effects at the beginning of that that are kind of otherworldly. They get across that idea of dissonance and uneasiness. How did you create that?
I'm glad you asked that because I work outside the box a lot, with my music. I do things, I try to, stretch things and push the paradigms. And so one of the things that I will do, and I really got to, this album afforded me the kind of space to be able to do more of this stuff. And so on that particular song, I employed this weird technique that I do where I basically trick the keyboard that I have in my studio. I have a Roland keyboard that has all kinds of different sampled sounds on it. But I also have effects in my recording studio, right? So I went in the studio and I was working on this particular composition, Sonic Madness. I'm like, it's got to sound bizarre. It's got to sound, different. So I started playing around with sounds on the keyboard until I found an interesting sort of string section that was very kind of edgy. And then I said, I wonder what that would sound like if I ran it through a different type of effect on my recording studio. So I literally put the recording studio into the guitar effects mode. And the effect that I landed on was a tremolo wah effect for an electric guitar. So I ran a pad, a string section pad, from my keyboard through a tremolo wah guitar effect on my recording studio, and that's what came out. And as soon as I heard it, I said, that's it.
Yeah, it really gets that feeling across. Wanted to ask, there are a couple of songs where you hear thunder and rain. You had talked about how there's some kind of ebb and flow in the album. It's not all a straight line up. For those songs where there is that storminess, there is some separation between those. And what was your idea in making those periods of storms in the album?
That's cool that you noticed that. The where I put a lot of when you hear the actual thunderstorms and stuff, there's also moments where you hear the wind kind of blowing, like when you hear the actual thunder, I put those in very specific spots. Early on in the album where you hear them, okay, the songs that they are on are songs where you are in the middle of it's a storm and it's like, whoa, I need to get out of the elements here. This is not good. This is ominous and dangerous and whatever, you might think about when you think of storms. Later in the album, the thunders and stuff that you hear are sort of like the end of it. They're sort of like, it's like, okay, there it went. The thunder's happening and it's raining, but I think I see a rainbow over there. Right. And so you get that feel because of the music that it's put with. By itself, it's just a thunderstorm, but when I put early on in the album, the music is very kind of, it's heavy. And that storm is speaking to something, kind of alarming. But later in the album, when you hear that storm again, you've traveled. You've made a journey. And now that storm's in there, and you're looking and you see, like, wow, it's hope. It doesn't feel ominous anymore, even though you still hear the thunders. It's like, oh, there it went. You're kind of looking over your shoulder going, we made it through that, So that's kind of how I did it.
I feel like once you get past that second round of storms, the songs become prettier. They're hopeful. And in the middle, like the song Seize the Power, it almost sounds like a movie soundtrack. It's big. Tell us about that song.
That was intentional on that one. I wanted that song to have a very epic, kind of really weighty, kind of like, because it's a very strong statement, seize the power, it's sounds very assertive. And it kind of starts off, it's really funny. It starts off, it almost has like a Jaws theme at the start, it's like a, and it's kind of, whoa, what's happening here? But then there's this moment, and I worked really hard on these compositions to make sure they did this. I didn't want the compositions to be all darkness, because that's not what I'm about. I'm a creature of the dark. I'm up at night. I'm a night owl. I've always been a creature of the night. They say that doctors study medicine, but healers study darkness. You see? And so to me, there's something that we can learn from the dark. There's something we can learn from what we're going through right now. And in the learning is how we emerge, how we seize the power, how we find our ability to stand up. So when it comes out of that darkness, you hear choir voices singing, and it gives you this like moment where you're just like, oh my gosh, yes, and it feels so sort of empowering. And that's the idea. Seize the power. You're not going to be able to do that unless you find the empowerment you have within. We all need to find our own self-empowerment and realize that we're not helpless and we can do something, and that something is what we need to figure out.
Can I say something?
Oh, please.
You'll find in the music after you seize the power, there's just this lightness. And that one thunderstorm that you heard, I tell John, I say, every time that comes on, I know what it is. The name of the song is Promise. And I say, I see a rainbow. I see this after, when my dad died and we were going to his funeral to bury him, there was a storm, and I looked up in the sky and there was a rainbow. And so there was this promise. After that, every song, especially the last one, gets more beautiful and more light and more soul-filling. And it's kind of funny because John, when we're in the studio, he always likes the ominous, dark notes and stuff. And I'm always about, let's make it pretty. So when we were working on this, it managed to do that for both of us.
Let's talk about that. What are your differences as far as the type of music that you prefer, and how did both of those come together in this album?
I thought, oh boy, she's not going to like this music. I thought she's not going to like it. But she did know what the concept was. She knew what I was doing. She knew what I was working on down there. And so I think that might have factored in, but I was really relieved when she had the first, because I kept her away for a while. And finally I said, okay, all right, I think it's good enough. I'm at a place where I can play some for her. And I couldn't believe it when she said, I love it. I was like, wow, great, I'm so happy.
It's a journey, not just dark or light. Did you write the songs in the order that they appear on the album?
Somewhat, but not all of them. Some of them came later, but there is, for the most part, they kind of came to be the way they are on the album. There's a few anomalies. There were a few that came early that were different. Like one of the songs I worked on early was the title track, Emergence. And that song is a very uplifting, very, kind of light song. But I had to get the recording down on it early because my friend who does all the music, the guitar music on their Van Adams, he flew down from Michigan to work with me in the studio, and that was a while back. So that song ends up, later on the album, but it was recorded earlier. Mm-hmm. So in those cases, there were exceptions to that, but a lot of them did come, like the opening song was early. The song Intransigence, which is one of my favorites, and I love that title. It almost became the title of the album. Because I just love the concept behind that word. But it's such an obscure word that we thought, we better go with something a little bit more recognizable,
Yeah, I tell you, my vocabulary increased after I looked up some of the names of the songs on the album.
One of my favorite songs that I did with Van on the album is the second song on the album, and it's called Maelstrom. And even Peggy, who's graduated with honors from the University of Michigan, had to ask me, what the heck does that word mean? And what it is, physically, a maelstrom is a whirlpool that kind of draws everything in. It's a very powerful whirlpool. But figuratively, a maelstrom is it's like this swirling mess, this swirling chaotic thing that just sucks you right in. And that's why I wanted it early, because that's how I feel about a lot of what's happened, is that some of our good buddies have been, there they went, and even we sometimes catch ourselves getting drawn into the current of the maelstrom that is the world we're in right now. And so I wanted that song to be early, and so Van nailed it.
So you mentioned Van. Who are some of the other collaborators on the album?
I do need to say first and foremost that Van Adams has collaborated with me on most of the albums I've released since 2008. He is sort of, I always jokingly say he's to me what Bernie Taupin is to Elton John. You know, Van comes up with so many amazing guitar compositions. It's just fantastic, and he's always been there since we started working together all those years ago. So he's on 4 tracks on the album. Van is. This time around, something really cool happened. I have a really good friend down in Florida. His name is Kenny Lauer, and he and I are, thick as thieves. I just love the guy. And we met really through music because I collaborated with a band out of Finland years ago called Nightwish. And we released an album back in 2005 and toured all over the world with it. And Kenny was a big fan of Nightwish. And so he came across me through that collaboration. So we met years ago and just became fast friends. So ever since then, whenever I release an album, Kenny's always written me a text, and he's always said, "Hey man, if you ever need anything," because he's a musician too. He uses all kinds of tools to create music. It's just pretty cool. Every time he's asked me, I've always said, "Thanks, bro," and I've never taken him up on it. And so I was working on this record, and I was telling him about it, and then he shot me one of those texts where he said, "Hey, if you need anything, just holler," And that was ringing in my ears for days, and I just thought, you know what? I think I'm going to take him up on it. So I dropped him a text back after a few days, and I said, "Hey man, you want to have a go at it?" He is, he nailed it on that opening song, Incipience. That's him. He knew what I was wanting to do and what I wanted to say and what the album was about. And I just couldn't believe it when he sent the first version of it to me. I was just floored. I'm so excited that he's on the record and that he got to play such an important role. So there's Kenny, and then Tim Hillwood, his wife Rebecca. Tim and Rebecca create beautiful music together. They're both incredibly gifted musicians. When I did my Eclipse album release back in 24, Tim and I it was the first time we ever played together, and he was there to do some performing, and we just thought, hey, let's just wing it and play a little bit together, and we did, and it was wonderful. So we met, we talked, I told them what the album was about. I said, "Do you have a song? Do you have something, that you can come up with?" And they said, "I think we do." And they showed up in the studio, the two of them together, and wow. So they ended up being the creators, the co-creators of the song that closes the album. So they did the song Beatitude, and it's just gorgeous. It has this beautiful flow to it, and it feels so hopeful and uplifting. I love it that it ends on that. Go from where it starts to where it ends is just something, And then lastly, my good buddy David Blankenship, man, and his lead guitar on Sonic Madness is just out of this world. Just love it. I was working on that composition, and the way composition works for me is I hear it. I'll be in the studio working on something, and all of a sudden I hear it. I hear this instrument. And I'm like, so I was working on that composition, and I heard a lead guitar. I heard it wailing like it was 1,000 miles away. I said, "Oh my gosh, I hear a lead guitar." Now I'm a guitarist. I could pull off a lead if I wanted to, but I like to bring other creative sort of input in. I like to bring other ideas and voices because they'll do things I might not have thought of. And usually haven't thought of. And so I immediately thought of David. I thought, oh man, this would be so cool if he's willing to do this. So I dropped him a text. I said, "Hey man, what do you think?" And he was all on for it. So he's on Sonic Madness. So those are my collaborators, and I'm super excited about it.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the concert. Will the concert be the songs in order as they are on the album? Or what can we expect in this particular show?
Especially for the first few, performances of this, I'm going to really try to stay true to the chronology of the record and perform the songs in the order. You don't have enough time in a concert to do the entire album, every song, but we'll pick selections that are in order to tell that story as the album goes. So it's going to start with Incipience. It has to. The show will start with that, and we'll go from there. But we're also, I don't know yet. I haven't decided quite yet if I'm going to pepper in anything from other albums or not. I might play something from Eclipse, possibly, but I haven't decided yet on that. The other part of the concert that is kind of cool how we're folding this in is the Mother's Day aspect of it, because as Peggy said, we have always done a Mother's Day show here, and it was so cool that it worked out that we were able to roll this into that. So to give mothers an outing and give them a break on the price and everything. So there will be, as I kind of go through the story of what Emergence is, there will be moments where I get the chance to talk about motherhood, and talk about what it means and what our moms mean to us, and what is motherhood, and why is it so important? And it's very important to what this concept of this album is about. It really is. It's about, if you think about the earth and you think about get back to grounding and balance, and you hear the sounds of the wind and the thunders and the rains, and it's all tied. We're all tied to this earth. And when we realize that we're all just citizens of the planet, and we're all just children of the mother that we live on. And that helps us to find our way back. So it's all going to be tied together in a kind of a neat little bow, at the end. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm very excited about performing this new music.
So you said there are some special guests who will be at the Mother's Day performance. Did you want to tell us who those are?
Do you want to say?
The final song will be Beatitude, and we'll have Rebecca and Tim there to perform with John.
Yeah, we're going to perform Beatitude live with Tim Hillwood and his wife Rebecca. His work on that last song, it's just, I just love his guitar on that. It's so beautiful. It's just so perfect.
Perfect is the word. Perfect song to end the album. Perfect way to wrap up the concert with Tim and Rebecca. Perfect way to wrap up this interview as well. Thank you, John and Peggy, for your time. We are excited about the concert. Once again, it's Mother's Day. That's Sunday, May 10th. Doors open at 6. Concert is at 7. It's at Inn of the Ozarks Convention Center. That's 207 West Van Buren. Tickets are $25 in advance, $30 at the door, and mothers get in for just $15. You can get tickets online at john2hawks.com. That's john2hawks.com. I'm Keith Parnell. Thank you for listening.